j'espère que vous
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone has been having a good week up to now.
seen the last of each other until the new year, but as you know, I celebrate Hanukkah, and with it coming up, I couldn't think of a better Hanukkah gift than to be here with all of you today. And Minister, thank you for finding the opportunity to join us for a discussion that continues our study on the auto sector. So, colleagues, as you may recall, we passed a motion on October 22nd, 2025. We were talking at the time about Stellantis. That is the topic that we have invited Minister Champagne to join us on today. Minister, I will offer you an opportunity to provide some introductory remarks, and following that, as you've learned over the past number of years that you've been here, we will have a set of questions from colleagues around the table. Alors, avec ça,
Without further ado,
Charles Vincent, Senior Assistant and Deputy Minister from the Industry Sector, as well as Benoit Tessier, the Director General from the Industry Sector, who have joined the Minister here today. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Welcome. Monsieur Ministre, la parole.
Minister, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, colleagues, for having welcomed me to this subject, which is very close to me. As you know, Mr. Chair, the two colleagues on either side of me are experts.
Thank you. Somehow I was missing you. Merci de m'accueillir.
Thank you for welcoming me here to discuss not only the specific situation surrounding the Stellantis assembly plant in Brampton, Ontario, but also our government's actions to support and defend the Canadian automotive sector and the workers who are the foundation of this vital industry here in Canada.
As some of you will recall, I had the honor of tabling Budget 2025 in the House of Commons. That budget was more than anything else a vote of confidence in Canadian industry and in Canadian workers, as well as a recognition that our world is fundamentally changing, and I would say at an unprecedented speed, scale, and scope, Mr. Chair. I mean, some would have to go back to 1945, some would say the fall of the Berlin Wall, but it's like the trading route is the world economic order, it's the supply chain, it's technology, it's quantum and AI. You just feel whether you're on the factory floor, at the kitchen table, or in the field in Saskatchewan, that all that is happening. It is broad, it's coming quickly, and it has impact for everyone. So that's kind of the scene setter in which we're operating, Mr. Chair. As you will know well, as member of the Industry Committee, the United States, our largest trading partner, is fundamentally changing its trading relationships. Like I said, the speed and scale of these changes is causing massive uncertainty. And as a result, we have to focus on what we can control. Just want to put in perspective, we were with the International Monetary Fund a few days ago, and what they call the Uncertainty Index, published by the International Monetary Fund. The world is more uncertain now than in 2008, just to give you a sense of perspective of what we're going through as a nation, but also as a world. And it's not by a margin, but it's almost double than what you found in 2008. So that's the state of the world. That's how we operate. That's how we need to chart our course for Canadian industry. And that's what we've done, Mr. Chair, and that we're doing in knowing that Canada has what the world wants, and I would say increasingly needs. Le Canada dispose d'atouts.
We have enviable assets. As you know, we are bordered by 3 oceans. We're the only country to have trade agreements with every G7 nation. This gives our businesses an incredible privileged access to global markets. We have access to 1.5 billion consumers on a preferential basis. We are an energy superpower with the 3rd largest oil reserves and the 4th largest natural gas reserves in the world. Our electricity network is 85% clean electricity with considerable potential to power tomorrow's green economy. We have the financial capacity to unlock major investments and transform our economy. And colleagues will remember that the IMF said there are 2 countries in the world that are distinguished. Not 5, not 10, not 20, no, 2. Canada and Germany that has this capacity to invest so that we can adapt ourselves to this new world economy. And above all, we have the best workforce. The workers that we meet from coast to coast to coast, it's thanks to their know-how, their vision, and other assets that we're able to make generational investments in our country. And that is how we can build the strongest G7 economy.
In Canadian industry and Canadian workers informs every decision I make as Minister of Finance and National Revenue, just as it guided every decision I made in my time as the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, including the deals we signed with Stellantis, which I think that's what you want to talk about. And I'm glad that we can set the record straight because we're going to bring facts to Canadians who are watching at home today. Canada's automotive industry is a cornerstone of our economy. It contributed roughly to $16.8 billion in economic activity in 2024. It directly employs more than 125,000 Canadians. This is a great, astonishing number. This is families that depend on good work that the industry is providing, and it's supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs in indirect industries. The strength of Canada's auto sector is one of the many reasons why Stellantis at the time chose in 2023 to sign an historic agreements with the Government of Ontario and the Government of Canada. It is also why the recent actions taken by Stellantis are unacceptable. Let me be very clear. We are deeply disappointed with the production change that have been recently announced by Stellantis. Their decision to cancel production plans for the Brampton assembly plant go against the commitments they've made to Canada, to Canadian workers, and to our government. Working with both our government and Premier Ford's government, as well as the union, Stellantis made clear and also undertook contractual undertaking to invest in Canada and in the Brampton plant. This is not a commitment that can be casually dismissed, and we are actively working to hold Stellantis to account. As my colleague, the Minister of Industry, explained to this committee recently.
Stellantis needs to honour all of its commitments to workers, to the industry and to Canada. We will make sure that they are called upon.
Every single page and clause of the contract, because we're going to refer to very specific sections so that you can be informed about the interaction between the different clauses that you will see. Comme vous l'avez vu,
As you've seen, on the 23rd of October 2025, together with my colleague, the Minister of Industry, we announced a 50% reduction in the annual discount quota granted to Stellantis, given its decision to cancel its production plans in Brampton. This decision to reduce Stellantis' import rebate quota clearly demonstrates Canada's commitment to using all means at its disposal to defend its interests.
in this room, there is no political party. Everyone in this room should be accurately aware that we as a country are confronting a new global realities which have resulted in domestic challenges, and that's why we need to take bold and bold steps and actions in order to defend our industry. Colleagues will recall we quickly responded to the U.S. tariff on vehicles manufactured in Canada by imposing a 25% tariff countermeasures on passenger vehicles which were imported from the United States. In addition, we introduced a performance-based remission framework that allows automakers maintaining investments and production in Canada to import a set number of U.S.-assembled vehicles tariff-free under CUSMA. In lowering these quotas for Stellantis and GM, we have also shown that this framework will only be available to those who maintain their commitments to Canada and to Canadian workers. I want to be very clear. Companies that have made commitments to Canada and our workers must honor them. Full stop. We remain laser-focused on protecting Canadian jobs and ensuring that workers and their families are supported. We will use any and all tools at our disposal to do so.
This spring, Canadians gave our government a clear mandate, that to defend Canada's interests and build a strong and resilient economy. They placed their trust in us because we presented a pragmatic vision for addressing the historic challenges facing our economy. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, we have always known that changes in our trade relationship with the United States could have very real consequences. We also know that Canada can and will respond to these challenges with determination and confidence, and that has been shown in Budget 2025.
The Government has firmly committed to supporting Canada's autos industry and its workers as we did the day these deals were signed, and we will not hesitate to take strong action to protect our industries and our workers. We are investing in Canada strong, and we will ensure that support goes to those who invest in Canada's future. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll be quite happy to answer questions from my colleagues, and thank you again for having me to this committee. Merci.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le
Thank you, Minister. We'll begin questions.
Industry Committee. You will have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, Minister, the members of the Industry Committee do not have an unredacted copy of the contract. A redacted version of the contract was given to members at the OGO Committee after weeks of fighting to get a copy of it. But I am glad to hear that you are now familiar with the clauses in the contract, because we heard at OGO, in fact, that you hadn't read the entire contract when it was signed. What I do want to talk about is specifically right away is Section 6.3 of CIF Agreement 813-816-6251, which I hope you're familiar with. And to be also clear, I want to have your answers, not the answers of the people that you brought with you, because ultimately ministerial responsibility rests with you. In Section 6.3.1, create and maintain high-skilled jobs in Ontario, it says the recipient shall maintain an average of 4,475 FTEs in Canada for the work phase. The recipient shall maintain an annual average of 4,475 FTEs in Canada for the benefits phase. Are you aware of how many employees Stellantis employed when you signed this contract and you got this jobs guarantee?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chair, it's great that we have the same version. I'm working from the redacted version. And actually, I'm a lawyer, so it's going to be quite interesting to look at these things together. And you may want to seek legal counsel when you're referring to certain clause, because you'll have to understand the interaction between the clause that you mentioned, 631, and in fact 634D, which is obviously, you have to read these two clauses together. So we were aware of the number of employees that were there, but you have to read both agreements, because
I'm aware of that clause,
No,
but just a second, Minister. I'm aware of clause 631D, but there's an amendment
Seebeck,
that
pausing the, Mr. Seebeck, don't worry, pausing the clock. I know everyone's protective of their time. Colleagues, maybe I'll try to set the tone early. We've got the minister here. We've got colleagues that have questions. Let's let each other get through questions and answers. I will play nice with the time, and hopefully we can have a good quality conversation, which will allow us to head into the holiday season on good terms with one another. Mr. Seebeck, I've stopped the clock. There are 4 minutes and 10 seconds remaining. The floor is yours. Minister, if we can let him finish, and then Mr. Seebeck, allow him an opportunity to respond. The floor is yours. Starting the clock again.
Yeah, Minister, I'm aware of clause 6.31D, which talks about they will maintain production at the Brampton facility. But are you aware there was an amendment to the CIF agreement that says that clearly contemplates the closing of that facility? It's in Amendment number 2, which my colleague has a copy of. So I don't need to be told that the Brampton facility couldn't close. My question to you was, how many full-time employees did Stellantis have when you signed this contract? Because you're only guaranteeing 4,475 FTEs.
Sir, do you know for how long is the duration of the contract?
Minister, I don't know if you know how.
I'm just trying to help you.
I don't know if you know how this works.
Because if you want to understand the clause, I'm a lawyer, so I can help you interpret the contract.
I was a lawyer as well. When I'm the minister, you can ask me questions. That's fine. No. I'm asking you, did you know how many full-time employees Stellantis had? You can either say, yes, I did, and tell me, or you can say, no, I don't.
The number
you don't ask
was
me
known.
A question. That's not how it works,
The number was
sir.
known, but I'm trying to help you. You should be grateful. I'm here to help you. So I'm trying to help you understand the contract. I appreciate you didn't sign it, you didn't negotiate it, you didn't even participate in the negotiation. I did.
I kept
so
it
it's
hidden for
easier
2 years.
because I can help you and help Canadians
Well,
understand.
why don't you just help me right now and help Canadians by saying how many actual full-time employees Stellantis had when you signed the contract?
Well, what you need to look, the number you have there is an average over a period of 12 years. So what you have there is a floor. And I would say to you, you should refer to, if you seek legal advice, you would see that when you have these contracts with respect to the floor of employment, for the auto industry, they usually go for a decade. So what you have is that you have an average over a period of time. This is a floor. That's what I'm trying to help you understand. This is like a floor. And when you read that clause, bear with me just for 1 second. I appreciate you have a question. You need to read the other CIF agreement because they go together. There's a connection between the two CIF agreement, which is the Nexstar and the Stellantis.
I really don't need you condescendingly telling me to read things. What it says is the recipient shall maintain an average of 4,475 FTEs in Canada during the work phase. We're in the work phase because work is being done. And Stellantis had 8,000 employees when you signed this contract, 8,000. So that means they could fire 3,500 employees and still be in compliance with this agreement. And that there, sir, is the problem. Under this CIF agreement, the combined contributions were $3 billion. And they were still allowed, during the work phase, to fire up to 3,500 employees. And now they've fired 3,000 employees in Brampton. They did exactly what they were allowed to do. How can you say that this was a contract that was going to protect the workers? And my subsequent to that is, did you tell Unifor that this was part of the contract? Because I bet you didn't. They would not have been happy that you were allowed. They were allowed to fire 3,500.
You're making a lot of assumption for someone who was not at the table. I don't recall having seen you negotiating the contract with us. Maybe I'm getting old, but I could not remember seeing you at the table when we negotiated. But when you see that clause, like I said, you have to read it in connection with 634D. That's what I'm trying to explain to you, and this is a floor. That was the commitment by Stellantis. And you need to read it in conjunction with the other CIF agreement, which if you want to go back, the Nexstar agreement, because the Nexstar agreement has also a floor. No, but let me answer.
And under amendment agreement number 1, it says, if the recipient closes the Brampton assembly plant prior to December 31st, 2035, and the closure cannot be shown to be about the result of a whole bunch of things. So your section D doesn't matter because in an amendment you clearly contemplated that the plant could close. So don't lecture me, sir, on reading the contract. I've read it.
So, Mr. Seebeck,
I think you're making a lot of assumptions for someone who has not seen the entirety, sir. You have the benefit of having someone who did it.
The only reason I haven't seen the entirety is because you've hidden it.
Sure, I'm
Gentlemen,
trying to
we're out
respond.
of
If you want to pretend you were there and you know, just go on. What I'm trying to help you is to help you understand the contract and the interaction between the two clauses and the interaction with the other CIF agreement. Because if you look at the other CIF agreement, you have a protection for 2,500 jobs. If you put the two together, you have a protection for about 7,000 jobs, which is the floor that you have in these agreements.
And that CIF agreement was modified as well with an amendment that talked about the jobs.
Mr. Seebeck and Minister, both of you, please. When I intervene as chair, your responsibility in that moment is to listen to what I have to say to allow me to get us to a productive and efficient, respectful, and effective space, both of you. So your time was up, Minister. I was trying to afford a couple of more seconds for you to answer that question. I think we've done that. I'm now going to go on to the next line of questioning. That will be Madame O'Rourke. Madame O'Rourke, il y a 6 minutes, mais pour les prochaines quelques questions.
I hope for the next few questions we can be a bit more respectful of our colleagues. Thank you very much, Mr. Carr. Minister, thank you for being here. Well, when we're carrying out a study, we want to be able to understand the details of the issue, and of course we want to do that in good faith because we're doing it for the workers and industry. Minister Champagne, could you please explain the context of your negotiations with Stellantis and Nexstar? Of course, you're the Minister of Industry. Now, at that time, we know that the trade situation was very different. Of course, it was very different, so I'd like you to sum up Canada-U.S. relations at the time. Well, that's a great question, and I think that colleagues would be interested in knowing that in 2024, Bloomberg mentioned Canada. It stated that Canada was ahead of China in the electric vehicle supply chain, so Canada was well positioned. There were a number of investments in Canada, Volkswagen and other companies. We have to remember the context. At that time, the auto industry was in the middle of a process of transformation. And that's why I'm very surprised that one of the members here is not looking at the full context, because the world was seeing Canada very, very differently. Look, Volkswagen, one of the biggest plants they opened outside Germany was in Canada. It was in Bécancour to bring Quebec into the auto industry. Nexstar was building battery cells. We were getting Stellantis investments. At that time, geopolitics was very different. We should remember the Inflation Reduction Act. At that time, Canada positioned itself to defend the industry and to create an enviable position for Canada. And what I was trying to explain to your colleague earlier was that contracts like that one have to meet international standards. This is not something that's unique to Canada. These contracts are considered standard. Commitments are made over a decade. It's not just a matter of jobs. It's a matter of local purchasing. It's a matter of R&D and investment. I can say that what we managed to obtain for Canada's workers and industries was solid. We indeed attracted attention, investment rather, because we were trying to position Canada's auto industry in the 21st century. Because of course, when you've been doing things for the same way for 100 years, and you're going from internal combustion engines to electric engines, of course, this means that there's going to be technological change. The supply chain, suppliers, everything is going to change. In a situation like that, when you look at things like when the initial Ford system, that took a long time before it succeeded. Tesla didn't turn a profit for 17 years. Therefore, when there's technological change, and I think the electrification of transportation remains a North Star for us, I am proud of what we accomplished for Canada. And yes, we're going to fight to ensure that the provisions of the contract are fully respected in order to protect our workers, industry, and Canada. All of those provisions were cautiously negotiated. And that's why I'm very pleased to come cast light on it, because a lot of things are being said, but very few people were there at the time negotiating. And those people are here today, can speak about the transaction, the negotiations, the meetings, and everything that was done. I am here to increase transparency. And I think everyone knows that we're here to defend workers.
Sure.
Because you're talking about you're here for transparency, and the clauses in the contract make a lot of sense in the context and still today. So there's a lot of misinformation floating around about this conversation. So, Minister, what is it you would want Canadian auto workers to know, Canadians to know, about the routine clauses that are there, things like, requirements to report material changes, benefits commitments, defaults and remedies, all that stuff. What were the actual amounts disbursed? Because I think we heard in the House of Commons again today an allegation that $15 billion was disbursed. It's nowhere near that. You've talked about, the floor for jobs, but what's the misinformation out in the world right now that you would like to clarify and put on the record today?
Well, I wish I would have more than 1 hour to do that, but I certainly can start. First of all, I've heard the number of $15 billion. Mr. Chair, for Canadians, the commitment of the federal government under the special contribution agreement is of $9,704 million. So $15 billion does not represent the undertaking of the federal government. So that's the first thing. Of that amount, because you have to remember the special contribution agreement is production support. So this is not a check. This is akin to a tax credit. Of that amount, and I'm so happy you asked, because I'm sure my colleagues from the Conservative have read the Public's Account of Canada. If you go on page, and I'll be very specific because I've loved that. I'm so happy you asked the question. If you go on page 340, you will see that the actual amount disbursed, and I hope my Conservative colleagues listen to that because that's very important. The amount that has been disbursed by the federal government is $40 million. So I know that there's a lot of people floating a lot of numbers, but I would invite them to go to the Public's Account of Canada, which are audited. On page 340, they would see the exact amount that has been disbursed. So that's why I'm saying I'm trying to bring light to a discussion, because people make a lot of allegation, but I'm happy to go to each line to provide you the details so Canadians can form an opinion. But of the amount that has been stated in the House and amounts that I've heard today, 40 million has been disbursed, and that's in the public accounts of Canada, page 340, volume 2.
Merci beaucoup, Madame O'Rourke. Monsieur Saint-Marie.
Thank you. Mr. Saint-Marie, please. 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Vincent, Mr. Tessier. My question is for Mr. Champagne. I have 6 questions in 6 minutes, brief questions. So let's try to get through them. First of all, the organizations that support the development of artificial intelligence like Scale AI are reaching the end of their funding. Does the government plan to announce support for these businesses over the next weeks and months? Thank you. I'm very pleased to see you again, Mr. Saint-Marie. It's been a while. In Budget 2025, we included significant sums in order to continue to show national and even international leadership. Canada was one of the first countries to have a national AI and quantum strategy. And we know that the AI sector in Montreal and Scale AI in Montreal is one of those organizations that has played a key role. Indeed, sums were included in the budget, and the operational amounts will be ultimately determined by the responsible minister at the appropriate time. Nonetheless, I am proud of the advances that were made in AI, especially in Montreal. Thank you. When you were Minister of Industry, you promised an aerospace industrial strategy. When will that strategy be announced? Answer. Well, this is something I care deeply about. I think we need one, especially with the defense spending that we're currently making. I spoke to the Quebec Premier. There have been some real advances for the aerospace industry in Quebec, which, as we know, is a thriving industry. And indeed, I think our defense investments will enable us to assist the aerospace industry, which is one of Quebec's major sectors. Question. On another topic, I must admit that I was very disappointed when I learned in the budget, and it was confirmed by one of your colleagues at the HUMA committee last week, regarding the PRCC homelessness and encampment program. It's a $25 million program over 2 years, but that program will not have its funding renewed, despite the fact that we're going through a very cold period. People are living in encampments. We know that other levels of government are trying to do a great deal, but the federal government is not pursuing this funding. Why? Well, I think in the from the federal government in the budget, you've seen record levels of funding. We're happy that we can do our share to support municipalities. I'm pleased you're raising the issue of this program on unsheltered homelessness and encampments. We know that housing is the cornerstone of affordability, and we are very pleased to be holding a federal provincial meeting with colleagues this very evening. We have a role to play, but also other levels of government also do. There was a $13 million record investment or $1 billion to build more affordable housing in the country. We think that's an excellent idea. That includes $1 billion for homelessness transition housing. However, organizations on the ground, we're looking at a sum that has been decreased, and organizations have to pay salaries. That is what I am sad about. On another topic, we spoke about the crisis of the automotive sector. In Quebec, there's Packard. What's going to happen to them? How are they going to respond to the trade crisis with the Americans? Well, I've spoken with the CEO of Packard. The real advance here, something that ought to, I think, make you very happy, is that we did bring Quebec into the auto industry over this time. I don't think we would be speaking about Bécancour as an auto center 5 to 10 years ago.
I believe that this was a significant element of progress, especially with the Packard Group that has an assembly plant near Mirabel. I believe that as Quebecers, we have to celebrate the fact that we have brought Quebec into the automotive industry. It was our will for a long time, and even in Bécancour, when I go to Tokyo and Seoul, people talk to me about Bécancour, so it's a success for Quebec, and I'm sure that you're proud of it, and I'm proud of it as well. Yes, thank you. And we can only hope that the situation will stabilize with our American partners. Radio-Canada this morning says that the Prime Minister wants to be able to circumvent federal laws in the name of innovation. In C-15, there is a section that would allow ministers to circumvent laws and regulations under the guise of innovation. Under C5, that was the case for big projects, but now if it's deemed to be under innovation, it worries me. We have a rule of law. To me, this seems like an authoritarian push. Were this to be adopted, wouldn't that reduce trust of companies in the government's impartiality? So why move forward with this? Answer: we have to be nuanced. We are just following what the G7 is doing. We are one of the only countries where we don't really have a sandbox yet. We're getting better, but other G7 countries already have a similar system. Why? Because we know that when we want to innovate in certain industries, we have to have a sandbox. And within this sandbox, innovation can be done. And red tape can be removed to allow innovation to thrive. This is a fairly common approach in the G7 countries. Most of our G7 colleagues have them. I checked this morning, and that's why I said I saw the article, but we have to be nuanced. If you look at the international reports on innovation, you'll see that this is something that is fairly widespread in G7 countries. Just a small question. I'm really worried. I see that we have colleagues here, so perhaps you could send an email to the clerk with which countries do follow this sandbox approach. There's an international report, and we could provide it. It's an international organization that does OECD, G7 lists, and I would be happy to communicate it. Just a reminder, this has to be sent to the clerk, who will then distribute it to all the members of the committee. But thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie.
The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to the CIF agreement number 813-816-251 and back to the jobs guarantee. You said that this is the floor, the 4,475 full-time equivalents. And I asked you if you knew how many full-time equivalents Stellantis had at the time you signed the contract. You didn't answer, so I told you it's 8,000. So what this agreement allows as the floor is that Stellantis could maintain 55% of its workforce. That's what 4,475 is of 8,000. I was a lawyer, so I'm not great at math, so I used a calculator to do that. So I guess my question to you is this, and I think it's a very simple and straightforward question. And Minister, I just hope you'll give a simple and straightforward answer to it. This agreement allowed Stellantis to reduce its workforce by 45% and still be in compliance with the agreement because they had 8,000 FTEs at the time. Did you discuss this floor, as you described it, with Unifor, the auto workers in Unifor, before you agreed to this? Yes or no?
So it's a complex question, so I'll try to simplify it for folks who are watching at home. That's why I'm saying this is a floor, an average over 12 years. That's how you have to understand that. And I know you may not agree with me, but if you seek legal counsel, they would say that you cannot read this clause alone. You have to refer to the other clause, because I know you're going at the Brampton. I was there to defend the Brampton folks. I can even tell you how the discussion went step by step. But that's why we insisted in the same paragraph that you referred to in Section D, 634D, and let me read for folks at home, the recipient shall maintain production at the Brampton assembly plant during the term or until December 31st, 2035. So I'm just saying, when you read the
but no, Minister, I'm trying
to help.
So colleagues, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press pause. I'm going to give him 10 seconds to finish, Mr. Seebeck. I'm not taking that away from your time, okay? Just to let him finish. 10 seconds, Minister. Then I'm going to go to you, Mr. Seebeck. Clock is stopped. And then we'll provide you the opportunity to follow up. Minister, just in 10 seconds to finish your thought.
I'll do that in 10 seconds. So you have this clause, and you have to read the other CIF agreement with Nexstar, because these two agreements go hand in hand. So you have to read this clause the other section plus the other SIF agreement together.
Okay. Start the clock again.
Minister, for goodness sakes, that wasn't my question, was it? I asked you if you talked about what you call the floor with Unifor before you signed this contract. Were they aware that the floor could result in 45% of their workforce being let go before you signed the contract? It's a simple question, please.
Yeah, but I don't agree with how you characterize it, because what I'm saying to you, it's an average over 12 years. That's why you have to look at this clause plus the other SIF agreement. If you want not to mislead Canadians, but Canadians at home are not
sit here and be accused of misleading Canadians, sir. You won't answer a simple question. That's misleading Canadians. Did you discuss this clause? Did you discuss this clause with Unifor before you signed the agreement? Yes or no?
Sir, what I'm saying to you, because you were not there. So that's the problem. You're asking a question, but you don't know what you're asking. What I'm telling you is that when we did this agreement, you have to read the next star agreement and you have to read the clause together. Seek legal opinion.
My question.
No, but I'm telling you, seek legal opinion.
That's not my question. Did you discuss it with Unifor, yes or no?
We had discussion with a number of stakeholders when we were negotiating. That negotiation...
That's fine. You know what? I'll just take this clause and ask Lana Payne if you talked to her about it before you signed it.
I probably talk to Lana Payne more often than you, sir, with respect.
We'll see. I'm going to split my time with Mr. Guglielmin.
So just for the record here, before you take the floor, Mr. Guglielmin, I have a minute 35 remaining on the allocated time. Okay, sir? Thank you. I'll start it now.
Minister, CIFA Agreement Amendment Number 1, subsection 3, paragraph 4. You're clearly already talking about possible closure of the Brampton plant for Stellantis. Did you know that jobs would be at risk or there were going to be layoffs or plant closures before you signed the contract?
Sir, when we negotiated that contract was to make sure we have protection for the employees because, like, again, I'm trying to help your colleagues understand this was not negotiated alone. This was negotiated with the Next Star Agreement.
Respectfully, Minister, the question was if you knew there was already the intention to have layoffs at the plant, because you clearly considered it in an amendment.
There was no intention. There was no intention for, that's why I'm trying to explain to you, because when you've been part of negotiating these contracts, you have an average over a decade.
Minister, did you let Unifor know that their jobs were going to be at risk when you signed this contract?
What I can tell you, at every step of the way, we fought for the workers to have the strongest protection for their jobs, for the investment, and making sure that Stellantis would invest. And that's what I'm saying. When you look at the interaction between these two contracts, that's what you need to do.
Minister, I'll give you another quick one. Yes or no answer, please. We're committing billions to Stellantis. Were there preclusions for Stellantis to pay executive bonuses in the contract?
So I'd like, which billions are you referring to? Because like I told you, if you go to the public accounts of Canada, what has been disbursed under the special contribution agreement is
Minister,
40 million.
Minister, you said $9 billion. So regardless of how much has already been dispersed, was there a preclusion in the contract for them not to hand that money over in executive bonuses, those public funds? Yes,
sir,
or no?
there's a number of
That's going to be the last
covenants.
question. I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer it, Mr.
Well, I'd say there's a number of covenants in the agreement that protect workers, that protect Canada, and I would refer you to the public accounts of Canada.
But I guess
Okay, Mr.
nothing to
Gulami,
protect.
I apologize that we're now 20 over. Mr. Baines, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and happy Hanukkah to you, sir. And thank you to Minister for joining us today and for your very hard work in presenting a generational budget for Canadians. I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about what British Columbians would like to hear a little bit from you. U.S. Institute of Supply Management reported that last week, U.S. manufacturing contracted for the 9th consecutive month, and factories are facing slumping orders, higher prices for inputs, despite what our members, friends from the opposite side here say. Canadian jobs, the president's tariffs are shrinking. The U.S. manufacturing sector has shrunk. And while that's happening in the U.S., Canada is being looked at as a reliable partner around the world. So if you can maybe talk a little bit about the measures in the budget 2025, and British Columbians once again would like to know what work you've done on cutting red tape and the productivity measures, super deduction, and how is that going to improve our competitiveness, Canadian manufacturing?
Well, thank you. This is a great question. I think, you know, only when you sit, I guess, when you compare to the G7, when you look at Canada, we are a big magnet for talent. And I would think folks in British Columbia know that. We've been attracted record level of talent, and we have provisions in the budget to do that, the $1.7 billion. We want to be this magnet, the best and brightest in our shop, on the factory floor, in our research institute, colleges, university. Then I would say Canada is one of the few G7 countries which have a very strong industry. From the auto sector, we build planes, we build cars, we build ships. I'm reminded of the shipyard in British Columbia. We have critical minerals, and many would say that this is akin to oil in the 21st century, one of the few countries, including British Columbia, where we have a number of not only critical minerals, but refining with tech. We have an abundance of energy, and a lot of people would say energy is the proxy to growth in many respects. And again, we're the only G7 country with a free trade agreement with all the other G7 nations in the world. So that's why I'm confident. That's why when I said I believe in Canada, because when you compare Canada to many other countries in the world, we have a very strong base. Obviously, there is some headwind, like I mentioned before. We have the fiscal capacity. We've done generational investments in housing and infrastructure, in our sovereignty, in production, and competitiveness, and that's exactly what people see in Canada. Plus, stability, predictability, the rule of law. People want to invest in a jurisdiction which provide that. So that's why I'd say, from a British Columbian perspective, this is a budget, and I was at the Board of Trade in the Greater Vancouver, and I could say it speaks to people. People understand that this is something. Talk about the productivity super deduction. That's something that we've been talking about in this country. Since I can read, I would say people have been talking and writing about that. We're addressing that. Even, former parliamentary budget officer would have said, Canada has received good marks when it comes to its vision, fiscal sustainability, transparency. We just need to, that's why this committee has a big role. I would say it's great that you're looking at what we've done with respect to Stellantis, but I think that the world needs more of Canada, and certainly the role of this committee is how we can strengthen our industry, how can we strengthen our what we do for workers, how can we position Canada for success in the 21st century. And that's why I think that, the world is looking at us. You've seen a number of funds wanting to invest. You just saw yesterday an announcement by Microsoft, which I know has a big presence in British Columbia. So, we're going to continue to do the hard work to build the strongest economy in the G7. But I think in this new world, Canada has a lot of fundamentals to succeed in the economy of the 21st century.
Just building on the super deduction and the manufacturing, we had the folks from C-SPAN, and the marine sector in British Columbia is very important to us. So we had them visit us today, and they talked about increasing production of defense and their capability there. Maybe if you can talk a little bit more about manufacturing.
Well, this is essential to our nation. I mean, if you look at nations which have succeeded in the 20th century and even before, they all have strong manufacturing sector. Look at South Korea, look at Japan, look at Germany. There's even a report comparing Canada and Germany on innovation, on the strength of our manufacturing. So it's not by accident that the International Monetary Fund said, if you want to say, when I said generational, if you look at the largest investment plan in infrastructure, innovation, in housing, in the G7, a lot would refer to the German plan, which is $500 billion over 12 years. If you look at the Canadian one, if you translate that in Canadian dollar, that would be $800 billion over 12 years for Germany. For us, it's $450 billion over 5 years. So you would even say that the Canadian plan is the largest in the G7, and we're not even adjusting for the economy. The size of the economy with Germany is the largest economy in Europe. So I would say that's why what we've done is generational, and that's why I'm happy to stand with you to fight for our workers, fight for our industry, fight for our country.
Thanks very much, Mr. Baines. Monsieur Saint-Marie, 2 minutes 30 secondes.
2 minutes and 30 seconds, Mr. Saint-Marie. All right, I'm just going to take 30 seconds before I continue with the questions to thank you, our colleagues, our staffers, and I'd especially like to thank those who enable us do our work properly, the clerk, the analysts, the technical support team, our excellent interpreters. I would like to sincerely thank all these people since it's our last meeting before the holidays. I'd like to wish you all happy holidays, happy Hanukkah. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Now, Minister, well, I thought that was the question, and I wanted to chime in to thank the interpreters and others. No, that was not the question, although I would like to thank the interpreters again. Now, our ridings are actually connected in one location. I have the Tekame community in Manawan, and there's also the Saint-Michel-des-Saints community. There's a graphite mine project there, and I would like to thank the government for the support that is granted to that project. But there's also the Saint-Michel-des-Saints sawmill that has been closed since August because of the American tariffs. That was a company that had opened after the closing of the Louisiana Pacific. It's the biggest employer in the regional county municipality. And a few weeks after that, the federal government said that there would be assistance. That was in August. But today, it's December, and the sawmill still cannot access that program. Hundreds of workers are on EI, as well as other indirect jobs with people who are now on EI. Can you do something to help these individuals? Answer, there are a number of programs in place. I don't recall who owns that sawmill. Is it Arbeck? No. The director is Jean-François Champoux, but, well, you have my number. Give him my number. He can call me, and we'll see. Because, yes, we have implemented liquidity programs to help businesses. I will be very pleased to speak with him to see what we can do. Like you, I am from a place where the softwood lumber industry is important. I'll be pleased to speak to him. He spoke with your colleagues, and he's constantly being told, yes, you have access to the loan guarantee program. However, today, that is not the case. Mr. Sainte-Marie, I know you are someone who cares deeply. I can tell from the way you speak, and I'm going to be very pleased to speak with the owner of the sawmill that you mentioned. Just give him my number. Thank you, Mr. Sainte-Marie.
Sir, you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to be back here. Minister, quick question for you. Is this contract to Stellantis, the SIF agreement number 813-816-251, is it a usual contract?
You know, I'm a lawyer, so how do you want to define usual?
Well, your department said that this is a standard contract that they use regularly and maybe a few tweaks, modifications here and there, but we were told that this is a standard contract. So is this a standard contract?
I would say in my experience, you know, I've been practicing law or I've been qualified for a number of decades now. I would say what I find in this contract is certainly having what you would expect in the contracts you see with the auto sector and beyond. I think we've added a number of provision and covenants, particularly the connection between this agreement and the Next Star agreement. I would say this is going beyond what you normally see.
Okay, how many other contracts like this have you handed out?
Well, listen, certainly the one with Volkswagen, certainly the one with Honda, and the ones that have been entered into during my time as industry minister. There was a number of one in Bécancour as well, so I've seen all of them.
Okay, now I recognize that, yeah, you're not the industry minister anymore, but under what part of this contract is the minister using to sue Stellantis? She said she's suing them, so what clause is she using to sue them with?
Well, you say there's a clause about remedy, which you need to first, yeah, no, exactly, that's what I'm saying. There's a section about remedy, which calls for mediation, arbitration. You need to provide notice of default. There needs to be a report. So it's pretty extensive in terms of the remedies that exist. And like I said, when you look at that, and I think that's the uniqueness in a way of this, is the interaction between that and the Next Star agreement. So the connection between the two is making it robust, I would say, in terms of protection.
So it's a standard contract where you give money to companies that lay people off. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I would say it's standard. You know, first of all, there's a lot of, you know, again, when you say give money, you have to say there's a lot of condition precedent that have to be met. If you're looking at this one in particular, now I just want to help you. Like I said, 40
billion.
billion.
Here's the key, though. Here's the key, really quickly. I don't need your help. We don't need your help. The workers at Stellantis, they needed your help, and you let them. They lost their job. Over 3,000 people lost their job. They needed your help. You failed them. This contract failed them. Okay. That's the point that you're missing and you're not picking up here. I'm going to give the rest of my time to Mr. Guglielmin here, but again, sorry, Mrs. Borelli, my apologies here.
Minister, we've been asking for the terms of the contract for a very long time, and they've been hidden for us. Vital information has been held from Canadians. Please tell me, what else are you hiding from the auto workers of Windsor, from uniform members, and from the people whose livelihood depends on the agreements that you make and depends on you being transparent?
Well, listen, that's the tenet of democracy. I'm here in front of you today to answer all the questions you may have. And to the comments of your colleagues before, I can tell you I've met a number of the United, the workers there, the union workers, and I can tell you they know that we fought nail and tooth to make sure that, because what you're not appreciating is to get to that, how much we had to force and to negotiate to have a clause with respect to Brampton. And I would say, since you were not there, I appreciate your point of view. You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. We fought to keep Brampton. And look at the section on Brampton.
Thank you, Minister. Obviously, you didn't fight hard enough because 3,000 people lost their jobs in Brampton. And so what I'd like everyone to take a minute and sit with what the Minister has just said. After the rise in the cost of living, job loss, taxpayer money being spent recklessly, and a message of sacrifice instead of hope for Canadians, the Minister truly believes his government is doing enough. For all the Canadians watching at home today and hoping that this government fights for them, speaking with the Minister today, we can clearly see that the Minister and his government are simply not up for the job. Minister, are you proud of the work that you've done on this contract?
I don't believe that's the...
Just 1 sec. Sorry, Ms. Borelli, on a point of order, you know I must address it. Madame O'Rourke, on a point of order. Well, I haven't heard it yet, guys. Well, you're not in the chair, so just give me 1 sec to be able to hear it, and I'll make a ruling, and then we'll come back to our line of questioning. Yes.
I believe that MP Borelli is misrepresenting what the minister just said to this committee, and it's not appropriate.
I think I'm going to just allow us to continue the line of questioning here, Madame O'Rourke. I'm not sure I heard anything that would suggest there's a necessity for me to intervene beyond that at the moment. Ms. Borelli, the clock says 31 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the Minister one question. Sir, are you proud of yourself and the contract you made with Stellantis?
Madam, maybe the difference between you and I, since I've served Canadians, I always do that with humility, with empathy and authenticity. And I would say today in front of Canadians, they can see what this committee is all about. If you want the truth and the facts, I'm happy to be here. If you want to come here and question my character, I'll let Canadians judge that.
Madame Akan, we have 5 minutes remaining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask one question, and then I'll share my time with Madame O'Rourke. Minister, I remember back in 2009 watching the news nervously. And as everybody remembers, the Harper government gave $14 billion taxpayer money as a support to GM and Chrysler. 4,000 jobs lost at GM in both facilities in Oshawa and Windsor, and 2,000 to 3,000 jobs in Chrysler, and many other thousand jobs in the supply chain. And when the Harper government bailed GM and Chrysler with no strings attached and no jobs guarantees, it ultimately led to plant closures as well, in both in Oshawa and in Windsor. So speaking of those, what lessons did the government learn when we are negotiating these contracts?
Well, thank you for asking the question. And I guess Canadians can judge for themselves. But when you have a contract, and I'm happy because colleagues have referred to one particular agreement, Mr. Chair, and I would want, for those watching at home, if you want to have the full agreements, they are, because there's different agreements, and there's a lot of assertion being made here without having legal counsel providing counsel to what is being said. But what you're looking is that if you look at the contract, the benefit commitments, so just for people watching at home, it's over, I'm just counting the page, 3, 4, it's over about 4 pages of undertakings that the company has. It's not only with respect to jobs, which obviously we're going to fight for that, but it's also with respect to a number of undertakings with respect to R&D investment in Canada, capital expenditure in Canada, making sure they would reduce the environmental impacts, creation of an environmental sustainability plan, and supply chain in Canada, limiting the work they can do outside of Canada, and we have even guarantors to that. So I would say that over time, the legal profession has certainly evolved in terms of providing the set of tools that you need in the toolbox to protect. And what I want to stress to people watching at home, these agreements have undertakings for more than a decade. So I would say that this agreement is much more solid than what would have been done in the past, I would say, with respect to that. Because it not only you have to read this agreement, which I've tried to explain to my colleagues if they want to go to the bottom of this, but you have to read the special contribution agreement with Nexstar, the agreement with Nexstar, and understand the interaction between these contracts. And that's where you have the full view of the contractual undertakings that were taken by Stellantis and its affiliates. So that's why I was trying to help the colleagues better understand, because I served at the time to lead the negotiation and therefore understand, because I was there at the time, the interaction. And that's why I say before people jump to conclusion, they would really have to read these contracts together. But I would say what we've done with the officials, I think you have solid protection. And that's why we, like I said, it's unacceptable what we have seen from Stellantis. I understand that there's an intention to provide a notice of default. There are very strong provisions with respect to defending the commitments that were done. And yes, during the negotiation, there was a lot of interaction with the workers, with the company, to make sure that we would, at the time, have the best possible deal to protect the Brampton facility, protect the Windsor facility, get a battery plant, and at the same time, really having a very, I would say, a number of provisions that would really guide us with respect to the disbursement. Because what colleagues don't want to hear, and that's why I brought the Public Account of Canada, when people talk about billions, it's good for Canadians to know that the Public Accounts of Canada would be very clear. There's $40 million that has been disbursed under the Special Contribution Agreement. So there's a lot of condition precedent that needs to be met before, obviously, other amounts are disbursed. And that's why I'm saying that I feel that, you know, under the circumstances and the negotiations we had and the investments we were able to attract in the country, considering the time, you have to go back to 2023. Everyone was fighting to get these investments in their country between us and the United States. If you look at the record, even don't take it from me, but Bloomberg said that we were ahead of China in building a supply chain. It's not me who said that, it's Bloomberg. I think at some stage, that's why I said, with the benefit of insight, I hear a lot of comments today of people who might not have been at the time negotiating. But I can tell you at the time when we stood and announced these investments, we were with the workers, with the unions, with the company, because we expected them to fulfill all their contractual obligations.
Thank you, Minister.
Okay, thank you very much.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The minister repeatedly said we should read the contracts and that we should have the opportunity to read the contracts. I just want to know, is the minister suggesting now that we should get unredacted copies of the contracts so we can read them? It seems to me that that's what he's suggesting.
Not sure.
Minister, is that okay with you?
Mr. Seebeck,
A redacted copy, sir. I have the same one than you.
Mr. Seebeck, I'm not sure that that would be classified as a point of order. But the good news is, colleagues, that we've come to the end of our time together formally, but it does mean that in the lovely exchanges of good wishes that I'm sure all members will have once I gavel out, there'll be an opportunity for members to ask questions. I do want to say just before we break, in the spirit of what Monsieur Saint-Marie said earlier, I had the opportunity, for those that might have been in the chamber earlier, to draw reference to my father. And one of the things I said in there was a really important lesson he taught me early, which is those with whom we disagree and see the world differently from are not our enemies. They're our opposition. And I think it's really important at this time of the year when we go home to our families and our friends and our loved ones that we remind ourselves of that, and we remember that we are sent here by Canadians in the spirit of the democracy that we all love dearly, to be tough on each other, but that we do so in service of Canadians, and I know all members know that. So as chair, I want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for your contributions to the country, all the staff, our analysts, our clerk, those that support us. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season, and we will see you back here in the new year. Meeting adjourned.
Well said.
you.